You're going to close us out today.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Following up on Congressman Parker's comments, I know it seems like a big reach, but it would take about 1% of the stimulus funds to fly the shuttle for another 5 years. I had another meeting earlier, so I missed your testimony apparently when you refused to disclose who made the decision to cancel Constellation. I don't want to beat that horse anymore other than to say I'm deeply disappointed in the alleged most transparent administration in the history of this country not to be able to get a direct answer on that, and a lot of people are. I think everyone shares that same question. When the President was campaigning in my county, he promised that he would close the gap between shuttle and Constellation. And number two, he would keep America first in space. He didn't close the gap. He made the gap eternal. And low Earth orbit sure as not hell is not keeping us first in space. You know it. I know it. He knows, you and I both know it, but it doesn't seem to change anything. The rest of the world knows it too. We have a focus on commercial in the future, and I love commercial spaceflight. I've spent about 20 years trying to help make commercial more profitable. I think there's a huge opportunity for there. If we'd done that earlier, there wouldn't even be a French Ariane today. But the reality is there's no profit in commercial rockets for human exploration unless we pay them. And we should be taking the lead in doing that anyway. I read your statement today, and it has a plethora of subjects that you said you were going to focus on, and then we've heard more about also focusing on education. And I'm just sad to see that the focus of NASA is not what this nation has always presumed it to be, and that is first and foremost human space exploration. I'm chagrined to hear the allegations that the Constellation program is over budget when you know, I know, and they know, we both know, it's underfunded. Russians have already increased the cost of ferrying the astronauts of ours and the other nations we're pledged to ferry back and forth from $30 million to $51 million per, and I just wonder if you would dare to guess what that may be ultimately when we no longer have an alternative like the shuttle to do that. We've not received a NASA workforce transition report since last summer, despite the 2008 legislation that requires it. Apparently, somehow it got sidetracked by Augustine. Given the importance allegedly placed on workforce, you have to wonder why we're looking at laying off thousands of high-skilled workers, and the question is when we can expect to get our next report. If shuttle safety is really a legitimate objection to continuing with the shuttle, the questions that beg for an answer is why we're going to continue launching the ones we have, and aren't they in fact designed, engineered, and built for 100 missions, and I think Endeavor has less than 30 right now. Augustine report also referred to that as one of the most reliable, I think talked about over 98% reliability. Thousands and thousands of space workers are going to be put in the unemployment lines across this country, and I know a lot of the people in my district are wondering exactly how many reductions NASA is going to make at headquarters. They're expecting a commensurate amount of reductions as we lay off thousands of people around the country, and I wonder if you would comment on that. And if there's not time to address all these, and it's obvious there won't be, I wonder if you would be kind enough to respond to me in writing to these questions at your earliest convenience. Unfortunately, history will show that unlike the landing of Apollo when there was a giant step for mankind, we're going backwards now. This is a giant step from greatness to mediocrity, anything but extraordinary, I think, in the future. And I think it's just a sad day for America. And the final question I have is, what would it take to get you to consider further renewing your interest in Constellation?
Congressman, I will get you answers for the record for the questions you asked about manpower, particularly that at headquarters. in terms of interest in Constellation, there are aspects of the Constellation program that I want to capture and I want to keep. And some of the studies that I've asked to be done right now are helping us to determine what technologies, what projects that we have in the Constellation program that we cannot do without, and that will serve as a nucleus for emerging programs. If I give you an example, two examples from the Constellation programs of things that we've already found to be needed and are going to be applied. The thermal protection system studies that were done for Constellation determined that there is a thermal protection system that the folk from SpaceX could use, and they have chosen to use that on their vehicle. So we have gained an incredible amount of knowledge, a wealth of knowledge from the Constellation program that I think will carry on to the programs that we develop in the wake of the cancellation of Constellation, if that is the final decision. When we look at escape systems, something that the shuttle does not have, at the Langley Research Center, we did a test on something called MLAS, the MAX launch abort system, which was highly successful. That is a system that we have recommended that the folk at SpaceX take a look at, because they want to use a pusher-type system also. And so rather than have them go out and reinvent the wheel, we've suggested that they look at that product of the Constellation program. So there are a number of aspects of the Constellation program that I would hope we would be able to capture and to use in future programs.
Thank you.